how to vary things and how to relate to kids so that everybody gets to move along, but you do that at a level that's appropriate. So the center movement was allowing more individualized instruction and moving people to different places. So let's move on to what they all have in common. Yes.
So from what I read, they were all influenced by
And that's what you were saying, Samantha. Yes.
all of them were psychologists, and they were all interested in human development and educational theory.
All researched and wrote about intrinsic qualities of the learning process.
They emphasize cognitive development as being intimately like the brain construction of knowledge within a social context.
Okay, that's a real critical piece. So it's not like people use them back within a social context.
They all analyze the connection between development and learning. They all focus on the individual, so students and learning.
And they advocated for a constructivist theory.
Theories apply to every everyone has the ability to be a
We're going to have post this on Blackboard. You don't have to write all these down. Linda's going to get this onto Blackboard, but not right away.
My stool or go like that?
Yeah. You can, so she's not going to get this all onto Blackboard till, let's say, after fall break, okay? Give her a little space and time, okay? Okay, so how does that sound to everybody? Because you were noticing some of the connections as we were going along, yes? Does anybody have anything to add to these? They really came, this group had the biggest challenge because they just didn't go over their notes from their reading, but they really had to sit down and go through, okay, what happened in common?
I don't know if this is true, but were all of them, when they first put their theories out, kind of ignored, or?
No, not at all. So when Gardner's theories first came out, they were groundbreaking and not ignored at all. Everybody jumped on that bandwagon, so to speak. So it was quite popular. So Vygotsky and Gardner had completely different kind of reception. Bruner, when this book came out, so this book is really interesting, and it's not that big and it's not that hard to read. It's less than 100 pages. In fact, it is 92 pages, okay, and I am sure our library has multiple copies. It was published in 1961. It was an interesting event. He was charged to pull a group of great thinkers together. Now, unfortunately, the list of the great thinkers are in here, and they're predominantly men. Because it was 1961, let's see where the list is. And they were, let's see. So they were gathered together in 1959 at Woods Hole and Cape Cod, 35 scientists, scholars, and educators to discuss how education in science might be improved in our primary and secondary schools. The 10-day meeting had been called by the National Academy of Sciences through his education committee. So it was a bunch of people, mostly men, pulled together. Don't take this personally, please. Okay, pulled together. Oh, here's the list. Okay. Was there a woman in the group? I don't think so. Okay, no women. Okay, not only predominantly men, all men. Okay, here we go. And their areas, I'll just read down their disciplines really fast. Mathematics, psychology, mathematics, history, psychology, education, history, psychology, physics, education, cinematography, that's nice. Physics, psychology, biology, you kind of get the, another cinematography person. Medicine, okay. So this group of men were put together, but because it was under the auspices of all these great, national, science, all this federal money that went into it, it was really well received at the very beginning. And Bruner was the chairman, so there was this 10-day meeting, and from the meeting he wrote this book. And so this is it's basically a report of the meeting. It's really easy read. It's makes a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know, if it makes sense to me, but it really was a process of the discussion of what happened, and it was basically how to improve the sciences. But in talking about how to improve the sciences in education, they really came up with, like, what are basic principles that make education better? And all of these kind of thoughts came out. So it wasn't, so he was received very well too, because there was so much force behind it. And in this list of all these participants, they were all from what was considered very respectable places. And I just read what their disciplines were, but now I should read to you. They were mostly from universities. So it was University of Washington, Harvard, Yale, Harvard, Penn State, Harvard, Educational Testing Service, Phillips Exeter Academy, University of Illinois, Teachers College, Eastman Kodak Company, Princeton, Johns Hopkins, et cetera, et cetera. So it was all very respectable things. So there was so much respectability behind it. It was very well received. Yeah. So really, out of the three of them, Vygotsky was the only one who sort of had a lot of issues. But he was in a completely different context. He was in Russia. Yeah. He was in Russia in the prior to the Soviet, I mean, before the revolution. It was before the revolution. So he was in a whole political context that was very, very different, so we have to take that into account, that it was coming up, through a very different thought process. It was the time of the czars, which was great for ballet, but wasn't so great for education. Okay, so, there are good and bad things about everything, so. Anybody think that there's anything they'd like to add to that list? Yes?
I don't know if this would be bringing this too much into a science perspective.
Bring it on, that's okay.
Because the coining of the word neurons was coined around the 1900s, and all these theories sort of appeared about 10, 20, or 30 years after this whole neuroscience thing started spurring up. I don't know if there's a connection between the cognitive side and neuroscience.
It makes a lot of sense.
Thank you for bringing it up.
So actually, hopefully we'll get Jerome Bruner to visit our class, and you could ask him that question. Were you influenced at all by, and ask him that question. Or I'll give you his email, and you could write to him and just say, this was the context of our discussion, and now we need to know.
There's an all this how the brain's working.
Yeah.
The development of.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's really fascinating. There are so many, and with that fascinating thought, there's so many things you can do with being a graduate student, and some of you are looking for having that degree and going on and applying it to teaching, but not everybody in this room is going to do that. Some of you need to go on and do the next great whatever it is, or analysis of this, and maybe Joan just came up with, Totally Joan. Totally Joan, and totally where it's at, okay? And that would be, because for the longest time people have been trying to pull together science and other things, and actually the field of neuroscience and learning and movement and everything is the hot thing. This was the hot thing like 20 years ago. Now we're on to this, okay? So Joan, your PhD is going to be about... You're thinking about that, okay.
Mike, call you over.
Well,
yes.
I'm just thinking about how these theories all relate.
Yes.
And I'm drawing a picture in my head because that's what I do.
Okay.
With that little circle of the ZPD.
Yes.
And then scaffolding, like coming and taking the child further out, and then scaffolding, and then spiraling, kind of working with the scaffolding.
Yeah.
And then the multiple intelligences kind of intertwined in it.
Okay, please draw that somehow in a computer thing. Oh, and then and then we're gonna put it on Blackboard.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll just take a picture
And tweet it for
Wait,
Anna.
Alicia, I have a.
More
You can
visual.
email it do it on the whiteboard.
Oh, you have a
Because I'm, like,
whiteboard on your? How do you do
Super
that? I don't
smart.
know.
Oh yeah,
It's a whiteboard app. And, like
you can do it.
Oh,
on
it's a
this
whiteboard app.
And then
That's
just
great.
save it and email it.
Okay, here we go. Alicia's going to draw it on a whiteboard, and then you're going to email it to your special pen. I can just save it and put it on my myself. Okay. Okay, so you'll just do it. Okay. Is it working? Wait, she needs a coach. She needs a Oh, look at that. Oh, you've got colors and everything. Okay, so the area of cognitive science that's become of great interest to dance and to movement people is we make huge claims about learning. We make claims about, the creative process is a form of higher intelligence, and we develop, really complex and integrated thinkers. And how many of you have made claims like this to students, to parents, to people, and dance really creates people who are totally integrated, and when people are do these sound familiar? But nobody has any evidence that this has really happened, but we really deep inside believe these things, right? Okay, so that's the field that's yet to be explored, Joe. Okay, and one of the problems is a lot of technology. Now there's a lot of technology where people can be very still. They must be very still, and the brain is actually examined while they're thinking about things. And so that technology does exist, and people have started to do studies about those. The technology that doesn't exist yet is how to study the brain, because I don't know one person who can think really creatively from a movement perspective and be totally still, But the actual, like we say, there's thinking in this, but you have to do it to know if there's thinking in it, and then you can't study what's going on in the brain while you're doing it.
There's actually some labs that have those caps that you can put on with all the patches, and you can actually measure some of the blood flow, so you can actually see what your brain adds up when you're doing it.
And they can be doing, okay, that's the study that needs to happen. It's happening.
Is it just that it's more complicated because there's, like, your brain is making sure that you don't fall down, and it's also thinking about,
Yes.
making an interpretive dance of Alicia's drawing and other stuff?
Yes.
They are working the same movement, different people are thinking different things.
Yes.
So how do you interpret which part is actually the brain? Because it's really measuring blood flow. So
Yes.
which part is the brain that's actually thinking, and which part of the brain is actually just normal function?
Right.
We still need to figure that out. So that's what we're getting up to, and that's the next step that needs to happen. Because really, for as long as we stand up and passionately say to people, this is so great for your kids, and your kids have to be doing this, and this is why, and you've got all the passion in the world, and you put behind it, and even you use some good names behind it. You say, because Vygotsky says it's good for us, and because Brunner says it's good for us, and because of this theory it's good for us, and because of this theory, when the bottom line comes, which is the holy dollar, and they say we have to cut somewhere, they're still going to cut your dance program because you haven't given them the kind of proof they can buy into. The proof is this, and that's the next type of research. So the theories are good, and you can make much more articulate statements based on the theories, but we still need some of the actual scientific data to support the theories and say this is what's happening.
I'm thinking about somatics, and
Yes.
I mean, there is now, there are somatic claims that are not founded, that are not proven by
Right.
research, but then they
Right.
are, like Bonnie Baber's coin discovering things 40 years ago that now they're like, oh yeah, there's a little thingy there. There's an
Yes.
endocrine gland. And so, I'm thinking, there's research in the field of, biology and health
Right.
that talks about some of the benefits, and again, the benefits are not just physical, but they're body-mind benefits.
Yes. Okay.
But there's lots more work to do.
How's it going?
I can't do it
Okay.
on here.
Okay. All right. You're going to get all the details on here. We can take a picture. It was a good start.
It takes time to
Technology
practice.
needs to go a couple steps beyond, right?
I did a version of it.
Is
there a
technological
Okay.
It's not.
Okay. But it was a good
I
try.
don't have
Okay.
that
For those of you getting into